Working safely with electricity. Part 2, the shock emergency. In the last program, you reviewed what actually happens when electrical current flows through a circuit, and you looked at how current can injure you by flowing through your body. You saw that it requires very little current, as little as 100 milliamps, to cause a serious injury. In this program, you'll see how to avoid getting injured by electricity. You'll look at appropriate attitude and dress, and you'll examine safe practices for working with electrical circuits. Electricity is dangerous. Understanding what happens when you get shocked should provide plenty of motivation to avoid situations that put you in jeopardy. Make sure your respect for electricity translates into safe behavior. Receiving a minor low-voltage shock may seem harmless, but in reality, more people are seriously injured by underestimating the danger of a low-voltage power source than by exposure to high-voltage sources. In the past, some workers considered occasional shocks acceptable, but any shock, since it presents a risk of serious injury, is unacceptable. For this reason, your goal is to eliminate all contact with electricity. Some practices in common use are unsafe. For example, in the past, electricians attempted to save time by locating a live wire by touch. No one can develop a touch for electricity. Finding a hot wire with your hand is dangerous and unnecessary. Meters are designed to measure voltage and current flow quickly and safely. Never put your life on the line for the sake of a shortcut. Since working on or near electrical systems can be so dangerous, make sure you approach your work with the proper attitude. Electricity should be treated with respect. When you're working on electrically powered components, be aware of the safest way to get the job done.
Hi, Carol. How's it going?
If you're not sure a procedure is safe, don't perform it. Wait and ask someone who knows how the job can be done safely.
All right, let's look on the print here. Okay, that's that one over in this area here. Okay, it's out of panel K.
Okay, do you know if it would be locked out now, the panel, or?
It should be, but I would double check it and make sure before you start installing it, and it should be.
Never let working with electricity become routine. When you treat electrical energy as just another part of the job, you set yourself up to become just another part of a circuit. Take your work seriously. Horseplay and other types of fun can distract you from the hazards in your environment. You should enjoy your work. Just make sure your enjoyment always allows you to remain focused on what you're doing. Focus, or concentration, not only helps you get the job done correctly, it's also a vital element of job safety. A good way to minimize distractions is to be prepared. Preparation begins with appropriate dress. As you work near electricity, protective clothing can be the difference between life and death. Certain types of clothing can reduce your shock hazard and shield you from the heat of an electrical arc or the particles of an electric blast. If you take the time to make sure you're dressed safely, you'll have one less thing to worry about as you work around electricity. It may not be stylish, but there is a safe way to dress. When you dress for work, be aware of the various hazards to which you're exposed. Let's watch what happens when a fault occurs on a ground transformer. Getting shocked isn't the only threat posed by working around electrical circuits. Even if electricity doesn't flow through your body, heat from exposed current can cause a flash burn on your skin. To see how this can happen, let's take another look, this time in slow motion at the electrical flash. Permanent damage can occur when the skin is exposed to a 205-degree temperature for 1/10 of a second. The temperature at the terminal of an electrical arc is 35,000 degrees. This is almost 4 times the temperature on the surface of the sun. Because of this intense heat, Serious injuries can occur with only brief exposure up to 10 feet from the source of the arc. You should always dress to protect yourself from potential burns. Another source of injury is from blast particles that are sometimes emitted from circuits with faulty connections. Blast particles are estimated to be about 1,800 degrees. These particles can burn your skin or damage your eyes. For this reason, long-sleeved clothing and safety glasses or goggles should always be worn when working with electricity. On certain types of equipment, a face shield offers the most protection. Also, wear clothing made of natural fibers like cotton. These fibers are more resistant to heat. Synthetic materials like nylon and polyester can melt and cause a serious burn. Clothing that fits comfortably and allows ease of movement is desirable in all work environments. Never wear jewelry when working with electricity. A necklace will conduct current and can get caught in your work. Remove any necklace before working around electricity. Rings are extremely dangerous because, worn on the hand, they are closest to the source of current. No matter what its sentimental value, a ring can do you nothing but harm on the job. Do yourself a favor and take it off. Safety glasses should be part of your everyday equipment. If your hair is long, use a hat or band to keep it out of your face and away from your work. If you're working on any energized circuit, make sure sleeves and collars are buttoned. Loose clothing can get in the way of your work or cause incidental contact with energized equipment. Long-sleeved shirts are also helpful in the event you experience a jerk reaction to a shock. The sleeves can prevent or reduce the severity of cuts from sharp equipment. If your work brings you near an energized circuit, be certain to wear protective leather gloves. Your hands are the most vulnerable part of your body because they're usually the closest to current. These gloves will reduce your shock hazard and protect you from burns and blasts. A special type of glove is designed to be worn around high-energy circuits. Make sure you always wear the appropriate protective equipment. Dry rubber sole shoes help reduce the chance of current flowing through your feet to ground. These shoes should be worn around electronic, electrical, and industrial equipment where a shock hazard is possible. But don't let the shoes give you a false sense of security. They can never act as an insulator. Current flowing in one hand, across your chest, and out the other hand wouldn't be affected by rubber sole shoes. Shoes are an important safety precaution, but they will not prevent current from flowing through your body. The jerk reaction resulting from a minor shock will sometimes cause a fall. A fall can be especially dangerous if work is being performed above the ground, for example, on scaffolding. If you must work off the ground, always wear a safety belt to prevent a fall. In addition, wear a hard hat. This can protect you from tools or equipment that might drop from above. But don't wear a metal hard hat. It will conduct current. A plastic or fiberglass hat will provide insulation and protection.
When I was told the ambulance crew and the fire department got there, the police were the first ones on the scene, and they apparently called for the helicopter, and they knew how bad I was hurt. Our guys, the gas crew that was out there, they were going to knock over the street lights to get the helicopter into the middle of the intersection, but they were afraid they were going to blow out the windows of the homes nearby, so they opted to land in the baseball field not too far from where I was at.
And I have a vague recollection of scrambling out. Fortunately, I had a sleeveless vest on that, because as I was crawling away and realized that, in fact, I was still on Earth, peeked one eye open, and I realized the vest was on fire, and during which the one supervisor that had been standing outside the cubicle and had also caught the blast in the hands and face had run down to the basement and gotten a fire extinguisher and ran back up and put the fire out on me.
I was told at that time
after
I
which
wasn't
it
in
was,
too great of a shape. I was probably going to lose my arm. They were just preparing me for all you know, they kept telling me I was burnt, and it didn't really sink in. You know, I'm there. I didn't feel anything. It didn't hurt.
When I was asked if I could walk, I stood up, and I did look at my left hand and arm and so forth, and my left hand, the skin was hanging off. And it was gee, that's gonna take a week or two to heal, and you know, hopefully it'll, the rest of it, I understand my face was very, very blackened. Matter of fact, I understand my eyebrows were burned off and so forth and so on, but the severity of the facial burns was not immediately noticeable to myself, or I didn't have any severe pain in the face.
They apparently
What
had
I
my arm in their hands,
did
and they were
find-
looking at it. My clothes were all off of me, apparently. They were cut off. And I really didn't have any particular sensation. I remember the doctor, Mary Lou Patton, he was one of the burn doctors, and she said, yeah, then we're going to probably have to amputate your arm because it's so bad. You know, with that, I finally just passed out again, and I was, you know, you ponder, all right, well, you know, if that's what it's going to take to keep me going, well, you do what you have to do, and, you know, you go through a whole...
Some work environments are more dangerous than others. Be conscious of the physical hazards around you and look for ways to make the area in which you work as safe as possible. Take time to examine equipment to make sure it's in proper working order before you use it. Frayed or burnt power cords and cracked or chipped plugs are a constant hazard. Don't assume an environment that once was safe will remain safe. Safety requires maintenance. Inspect equipment regularly and repair or replace faulty components. Adherence to general maintenance procedures will improve the safety of any environment. Make sure trash is neatly stored and emptied regularly. Don't leave tools or equipment lying in aisles or walkways. Improperly stored tools and stray electrical cords present a tripping hazard. Also, walking on cords can cause damage to the cord. Clean up any spills immediately. Accumulated oil or grease can be very slippery. Be especially attentive to water spills, since contact with water greatly increases your likelihood of getting shocked. Before working on any electrical systems, it's important that you understand some basic facts about how electrical energy gets to where you're working. After electricity is generated at a power station, it's transmitted at extremely high voltage along power lines. High voltage power lines are elevated off the ground to prevent accidental contact by people who are unaware of the danger. In fact, in most cases, the higher a power line is elevated, the higher the voltage available on the line. Once this high voltage electricity reaches its destination, it is directed to a substation, where it is then stepped down to a lower voltage by a device called a step-down transformer. Some industrial sites that require power for heavy equipment receive up to 140,000 volts on heavy-duty power lines. Inside a plant, this voltage may be stepped down to between 15 and 35,000 volts. But for conventional home use, electrical energy is delivered to its destination at up to 240 volts through a system using 3 power lines. One of the 3 lines is a neutral line. The other 2 are energized or hot lines. Each hot line is 120 volts with respect to the neutral line. Even though it's lower than industrial sites, this amount of voltage is extremely dangerous. More people are killed and injured each year by these supposedly less dangerous voltage lines than are hurt on high-energy industrial power lines. Lower voltage power lines are also elevated to keep them out of the reach of the public. In spite of this, people are killed each year because they don't understand the hazards posed by these power lines. In some cases, victims have simply forgotten the power lines are there. If your work brings you in the area of power lines, keep your distance and never touch a power line. Once current is inside a home or building, there are 3 different ways it can be made available at a receptacle. The first and most dangerous is a 2-wire line with no polarization or distinction between hot and neutral lines. In this case, one of the 2 lines is neutral, but without testing, there is no way to verify which is hot and which is neutral. A 2-prong plug will fit in any direction. This type of outlet is rapidly being replaced in the interest of safety. The second is a 2-wire line that is polarized. This type of receptacle can only be accessed one way, and one prong on a plug for this type of outlet is larger to assure a ground connection. Finally, the safest receptacle is a 3-wire line that provides its own ground connection. This type of plug is used on most electronic equipment, appliances, and electric tools. By connecting the 3rd wire to the frame of the equipment, this plug provides a path for current away from any person that may be touching the equipment while it's in operation. Now let's review the key segments of this program. 1. Take your work seriously. Horseplay and other types of fun can distract you from the hazards in your environment. 2. One good way to protect yourself while working with electricity is to dress appropriately. Wear long-sleeved clothing made of natural fibers. Use leather gloves if you're working near an energized circuit. 3. All power lines are extremely dangerous. Always be aware of power lines and keep your distance from them. In the next program, you'll see what grounding is and why it's vital to your safety.